Good morning and welcome to Joe Sammet Live on this Monday, this beautiful Monday morning, June the 8th, 2020. And today we're going to be talking about the new CMHC tightening of their guidelines and regulations that was announced on Thursday, going into effect supposedly on July the 1st. First of all, I want to start with talking about this a little bit, simply because a lot of people may not know what this in fact means. It's important perhaps to have a better idea as to what role CMHC plays, who else is in the space, who else insures mortgages for different lenders in Canada, and who else is helping consumers get into home ownership. So I want to start by right now speaking about what CMHC is and who they are, what they do. Whenever anybody buys with less than 20% down, under $1 million purchase price, their mortgage has to, by law, be insured by one of the three insurance carriers in Canada. And one is CMHC, as we all know it to be. The other is Canada Guarantee, and the third is Genworth. And not in any particular order, but CMHC is the name that people are most familiar with when it comes to high ratio mortgage insurance. So what has happened is CMHC, being that they are a Crown corporation, they've been called to task in recent weeks during the COVID crisis to step up and to help the government make some of the initiatives or make some of the support programs available by funds that have been accumulated through CMHC. Again, given they're a Crown corporation, they've been called to the table to put some money up to help, again, get Canadians through this crisis that we're going through right now. So it's not surprising that CMHC would be the one to right now cut back and change the rules and regulations. It's not surprising that they have had to do it. It's quite surprising and potentially poor timing, let's say, that they've done it right now or announced it right now during this crisis. But I think it's very important for the consumer and anybody viewing this today to know that CMHC is not the only game in town. So let's talk about what CMHC has changed, and let's talk about how that's going to impact the consumer. But let's also be very positive and come out of this with the good news. There is a good news story. And sometimes I get blamed for trying to be too sugarcoating or too Pollyannish, and I'm not trying to be, but I want everybody to be aware that the lending community is alive and well in Canada. The insurance community is alive and well in Canada. And there are still many opportunities for people to be borrowing and buying houses. So what I'd like to talk about right now is what CMHC has done. So first of all, CMHC, again, is one of the insurers for high ratio mortgages for less than $1 million purchase price and less than 20% down. What they have done is they've cut their qualifying ratios back to make it a little more stringent, a little stricter to qualify. So what that means is a Canadian buying a home up until July the 1st was able to, or is still able for the next so many weeks, is still able to use up to 39% of their income to service the debt of the house that they are trying to buy. They have now changed that as of July the 1st to 35% of your income. So they have cut that back by 4%. So what that's saying is that as of July the 1st, any Canadian that is buying less than $1 million with less than 20% down can only use up to 35% of their income to service the debt of the house that they're buying. Second is what's called TDS, which is total debt service. That means that the percentage of income that you're allowed to use to service the debt of the house that you're buying, in addition to all of the outside debt that you might have. Up until July the 1st, it has been 44%. Keep in mind, and I should have prefaced this by saying that this is all predicated by Beacon scores greater than 670 at the time. Beacon scores are your credit scores that you see on Equifax or TransUnion. So you are allowed, or are still allowed up to, again, July the 1st, to use up to 44% of your income to service the debt of the house that you're buying, plus all of the outside debt that you have. They're cutting that back now to 42%. So what this articulates to in affordability is somebody earning $60,000 per year with 5% down can now afford, or will be able to afford, 11% less. Now, that is, again, assuming that the lender that we're dealing with is going to use CMHC as the insurer in the background. Lenders, for the most part, have a choice as to which insurer they choose to insure the mortgage with when it is a high ratio mortgage. So I would imagine it's safe to say that lenders going forward are going to perhaps consider CMHC in less or in fewer scenarios than perhaps they would have in the past. So from that standpoint, again, CMHC is cutting back. The beacon scores for credit was, as I mentioned, 670 was allowing you to use up to 44% of your income on the TDS side, the total debt service side. That's now being cut back to 42%. But your beacon score to get a CMHC mortgage only had to be 600 or greater. It's now being increased to 680. So again, there lies the issue with what CMHC is doing as well. They're tightening up on their qualifying ratios. They're now increasing their credit score availability. So if somebody is trying to buy a house and they have a beacon score less than 600, well, they wouldn't really have been a good candidate for a high ratio CMHC or other insured mortgage anyway. Now what CMHC is saying is we don't want to insure any mortgage where an individual has less than a 680 beacon score. So from that standpoint, that's changed in a big way. It's very safe to say, and I have this on very good authority because on Friday when this was all announced, I made some calls to people that I know in the industry with both Canada Guarantee as well as Genworth, the other two insurers. And I have it directly from Mary Putnam, who's the Senior VP of Sales and Marketing with Canada Guarantee. Mary has told me that nothing is changing as far as their credit worthiness or their credit scoring, their ratios, everything is staying status quo for the time being. So I think it's safe to say that the reason this is all happening with CMHC is because there has been a major strain put on their funding or their funds available because of the call to action on some of the other assistance programs that they've been asked to step up to. So from that standpoint, they're cutting things back. Now, CMHC has also made some predictions and forecasts with regard to the housing market, saying that the housing market is going to drop up to 18%. I have nothing to base my opinion on other than just common street knowledge, I guess you could call it, but I don't see the marketplace dropping that much. They've also said that up to 20% of all homes could very well be, all mortgage holders could very well be in default. I find that a little bit hard to believe as well. Let's wait and see how we come out of this COVID crisis. Let's wait and see whether or not we get back to some sort of normalcy going forward and people getting back to work. There is going to be an impact, there's no doubt about it. But at the same time, I don't believe it to be as severe perhaps as CMHC is forecasting. CMHC's forecasts, as you can imagine, are also national forecasts. They're not regional. They're not set up to isolate specific communities when they come out with a stat like this. They do have isolated information available through their media channels and things like that. But at the time that they come out with a national announcement, it is national stats. So there are going to be some areas that are going to be impacted more heavily than others. But I believe that the housing market will continue to be quite stable. If anything, it might level off a little bit. It might even dip a little bit. But what that means is that our lending is going to remain strong. Our borrowing is going to remain strong. And our insurance providers, being, again, Canada Guarantee and Genworth, as well as CMHC. CMHC will come back into the mainstream, I would imagine, soon. I'm predicting that things are going to be quite strong going forward. I have a couple of questions, and let's see here. Does that mean that the other insurance providers are not Crown corporations? That is correct. They are private corporations. One, again, is Canada Guarantee, and the other is Genworth. And where is the messaging originating then? Is it a little irresponsible? I posted this last week, and I said that the timing couldn't be worse because I believe that regardless of the information and regardless of the fact that there are two other insurers to step up and carry the load for the marketplace, I believe that just the fact that this information was released and made to be such big news is irresponsible to a degree, but it is information, it is news that has to be shared. But from the standpoint that the general public is going to perceive this as the marketplace being in trouble, that is the part that I believe is irresponsible, because I don't believe there's enough good information getting out there letting people know that the marketplace is alive and well. The housing market, without question, is down, but it's down for very good reason. It will, I'm sure, ramp back up again. The mortgage market, I couldn't tell you that we are busier than ever, if not busier. So from that standpoint, our mortgage products, our mortgage availability is very, very strong. Lenders are very, very eager to lend. Now, they are most certainly tightening up only because they're making sure that they dot all I's and cross all T's. But at the same time, they are lending and lending strongly. So from that standpoint, is the information irresponsible? I wouldn't say irresponsible from the standpoint that it needs to be shared, it needs to be made public, but at the same time, there needs to be the flip side of that discussion being taking place, or let me try that again, taking place. And that unfortunately just isn't happening as often as it should. Please remember that a lot of the media channels, their job is to share news and be somewhat sensationalist, somewhat, I wouldn't say fear-mongering, but at the same time, most certainly to let people know that there's something bad going on, or that the whole crisis that we're going through right now is looking like doom and gloom. Again, I do get accused of being Pollyannish. I do get accused of being too positive at times, but I'll tell you, it hasn't done me wrong. And I believe that if we all stay positive, and if we all look at the other side of the equation and realize that there are other opportunities or there are options available to people, I believe that our marketplace, and our marketplace being real estate and mortgages, that's what I do, will remain to be alive and well. So from that standpoint, I think we're quite healthy. I think that we need to be aware as Canadian consumers that our credit, and this is a great spin-off of our 3-part credit series prior to this week, because your credit is so very important, vitally important, and especially even more today, given the fact that CMHC has increased their minimum beacon score up to 680. I don't believe 680 beacon scores are very hard to achieve. You have to make sure that you manage it properly. So from that standpoint, I think that the positive news that's going to come out of all of this is that the Canadian consumer is going to become a more educated consumer, and one that is able to withstand downturns like we're experiencing right now. So let's look at the bright side of all of this, and just know that you can most certainly still today get a mortgage. You can still most certainly today buy with less than 20% down, under $1 million. And just so everybody's clear on that, the minute you go over the $1 million mark, you have to have a minimum of 20% down. So these insurers I'm referring to today don't even come into the picture at that point. But you can still very, very easily get a house today. You can still easily get a mortgage today. Just make sure that you're taking something from all of these information sessions and others. Make sure that you are getting as much information available to you as possible to know what your financial picture will look like when we do get out of the COVID crisis that we're in today. So from that standpoint, please stay vigilant with your credit. Please stay vigilant with your income. And please make sure that you know about your mortgage and know what type of mortgage you have. Is your mortgage high ratio insured? Is it a high ratio mortgage insured? Is it a mortgage that can be ported to the next property without having to go through this information or this process that we talked about today? Know what your situation is. Don't continue to just fly under the radar and not worry about things like this. You need to be aware. So from that standpoint, love to share information with you. If there's anything or any topic that somebody wants to talk about, please reach out and let us know. And we will be continuing our weekly Monday sessions. And hopefully we do this forever, but at the same time, we just want to keep everybody informed as best we can. So thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll talk to you soon. All the best. Be well. Thank you.